September 5th, 2007. On the 4th floor of an apartment in San Francisco, a man decides to take an afternoon nap, completely unaware that half a dozen Secret Service agents waited outside for this exact moment to strike. You see, this wasn't just another single-room apartment. It was a control center of one of the dark web's biggest black markets. After years of tracking his digital footprints, they had finally cornered Iceman, a former FBI hacker who had quietly seized control of the dark web and crowned himself the kingpin of cybercrime. In an instant, the door burst open and agents swarmed the room, holding the man at gunpoint. However, to the complete surprise of the agents, Iceman was unfazed. His hard drives and servers, where he had stored over $86 million worth of stolen credit cards, were locked behind a wall of encryption, and without the encryption key, there would be no way anyone could access them, or so he thought. Before he became Iceman, Max Butler was just another computer nerd, someone who grew up fascinated by technology and the rapidly evolving internet. From an early age, he showed signs of being highly intelligent and deeply curious, especially about hacking. His father was a radio engineer and owned a computer shop, so he quickly developed an interest in electronics and programming. After graduating college, he worked for the FBI as a white hat hacker, a term for someone who identifies flaws in computer systems. Although Max had a history of being a troublemaker, he made a decent salary, so he resisted the temptation of using his skills for malicious purposes. However, this all changed when he discovered a fatal vulnerability in the computer software Bind. Bind is used to convert URLs to IP addresses, but there was a single line of code that allowed hackers to overload the memory buffer with requests and control the system. Although Max would follow the standard procedure of removing the bug and reporting it to the FBI, he would also add code that gave him a backdoor access. With this backdoor, he gained access to networks ranging from military bases to nuclear laboratories. As he slowly gained access to more and more classified information, he began to feel unstoppable. He was on top of the world, but he would soon learn the consequences of flying too close to the sun. A few weeks after he had installed the backdoor, FBI agents showed up to his doorstep. Turns out, in addition to installing the backdoor, Max had set up a notification system that would alert him every time he gained control of a system. It was a convenient feature, but it was also the source of his downfall. The notifications were traced to the phone in his apartment, giving investigators his address. Max went from earning a six-figure salary to being sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. He would later say, "I'm not sure why I left that back door open. I got carried away and greatly overstepped my bounds." In prison, Max Butler would meet Jeff Normington, an experienced conman who saw potential in Max and wanted to hire him for his skills. Initially, Max wasn't interested, but after prison, he couldn't find a job due to his criminal record, so he became desperate. Jeff introduced him to Chris Aragon, an ex-drug smuggler and bank robber. Chris had recently started making a living stealing credit cards and supplied Max with the equipment such as a high-performance laptop and long-range antenna. At the time of Max's release, the cybercrime gold rush had just begun, and there were two main card dumps, or sites where stolen credit cards are sold, Carter Planet and Shadow Crew. But instead of buying the stolen credit cards, Max would instead hack the hackers and steal millions of numbers from these vendors. He would offer free dumps pretending to be a well-known vendor, but when the victim would click on the link, their system would be hijacked. He said, "I convinced myself I wasn't causing harm because the given credit card was about to be abused by someone regardless." The stolen numbers were then transferred onto blank cards using a magnetic stripe encoder. Using these cards, Chris and his team would go on shopping sprees, buying a variety of luxury items that he could later sell on eBay. Max would also later start his own card dump site called Carter Market. Wanting absolute dominance over the dark web card economy, Max would start abusing SQL injections to take down any competitors that tried to rival his site. He quickly gained a dangerous reputation and was known as Iceman, the kingpin of the criminal underworld. At this point, Carter's Market had over 4,500 active users, but as the size of the website grew, it started to catch the attention of the FBI. However, despite having infiltrated many of the other card dumps on the dark web, the feds were still unable to uncover the true identity of Iceman. That was until one of Chris Aragon's associates unknowingly sold cards to an FBI informant. The associate admitted that Chris was working with Iceman, which was the lead the feds needed to hunt down the elusive hacker. They knew if they wanted to find Iceman, they would need to go through Chris. The cards were traced back to Chris, and he was promptly arrested when he went on a $13,000 shopping spree at Bloomingdale's. When they raided his apartment, they found stacks of fake cards in every room and a profit of $780,000 from eBay sales. After Chris's arrest, Max Butler became extremely paranoid, even going as far as buying a rope ladder in case he needed a quick escape from his apartment. The FBI raided Max's apartment while he was taking an afternoon nap. It turns out Chris Aragon had revealed to the authorities the identity of Iceman in hopes of lightening his own sentence. Half a dozen agents broke into his home while he was asleep, catching him completely off guard. However, despite having Max at gunpoint, all the evidence in his servers that was needed to prosecute him had been safely encrypted. Although it seemed like Iceman had once again outsmarted the feds, he had made one small mistake. His computer was left running. You see, when a computer is on, the decryption key is temporarily stored in its memory, so all they would have to do is access it from the RAM. But this was much easier said than done, as it took the emergency response team at Carnegie Mellon University 2 whole weeks to retrieve the key. The key was, one man can make a difference. On his computer, they found over 1.8 million stolen credit cards, totaling to $86.4 million in fraudulent purchases. Max pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 13 years in prison. In prison, he was still a rule breaker, once smuggling contraband items into the prison yard using a drone. He was released in 2021, saying that he was reformed. Max Butler's story shows us the power of technology and how addictive that power can be. Although he stated that he now wants to use his skills for good, he also admitted that the urge to hack was something he still had.